I click
So we are here
OK.
with Steve Wilcox. And Steve Wilcox, it's a pleasure to have you and your participation in this webinar. Thank you for taking the time to be with us today. And so Steve, could you please tell us who you are and who you represent within this industry, please?
Certainly. And again, thank you for having me here today. Again, I'm Steve Wilcox. I am the president of a small product design and marketing firm to the home furnishings industry. I've been in the business 34 years at this point and still continuing amazingly. And so I'm a small business person that advises manufacturers and retailers regarding design and marketing for furnishings, but also I'm the current president of the International Society of Furniture Designers, that although it's a relatively small trade group, they have a lot of influence regarding what products are designed, manufactured, and made within the US market. And of course, it is certainly a global industry and certainly growing. So
Oh,
that's who I
perfect.
represent, myself personally, my business, and then also people who do things like I do in the industry.
And just can you tell us more about the what kind of members you have? You have the members across the country, or just more in North Carolina or in other
Um,
states?
they're really all over the United States. We have the title international, and we certainly want to grow that. But primarily, we represent at this point the designers for industry. We're also reaching out to maker designers, that are more of craftspeople. But we certainly represent those designers, and many of them are freelance. Some are corporate, that work directly with the large manufacturers and marketers of furniture. So it's a true industry professional group.
Oh, great, great, Steve. Yeah, so can you give us an overview of the current industry in the home fashions in the US, please?
Sure. And just speaking very broadly, I've got my notes down here in front of you to make sure I have the right details. But
Okay.
in general, if I start from the macro standpoint and focus down, the current home furnishings market is $200 billion, $407 million. So it's a good size industry. It's highly competitive. It's very global at this point. And it represents, I think, a growing and more diverse group of consumers. Um, and and I like to break it up into the different age groups that are purchasing furnishings. And certainly the baby boomers, the post-war generation, is still there, spending a lot of money, and that they're approximately 70 million consumers. But the millennial consumers, who again are born from 1981 to 1996, approximately, are 72 million consumers, and they are the real target of the industry right now. They certainly are establishing their homes. They have children. They are in the full glory, I guess, of having families and then needing home furnishings. In general, I also think that the home, there's much more emphasis on the home as being a place where most activities can take place, not just living and relaxing, but also entertaining. And of course, with remote work, many people are working there. And
Mhm.
so there is a large emphasis on the home, which the industry is trying to address.
Yes, and what do you think about the design? Just thinking of millennials, is something different? Innovation, for instance?
Well, there's certainly multi-purpose furniture is very, very important. In general, the younger consumers are living in smaller spaces. There's less emphasis on having very large homes, which was very popular in the 90s and the early 2000s. So they're a bit more frugal in some regard. They don't need as large a home. That's not quite as much of a status symbol, but rather, traveling and having perhaps nicer things is very important. And one of the ways I like to categorize manufacturers, and how they address the consumer, is by the price points. And I define, there are four ways I look at it very generally. First is promotional, which is very low cost or very hot items that would sell very quickly. And they're very trendy and it may last a short time. Next, I go for the what I call good, better, best, which is perhaps value priced items at the good. Better is the middle market, and then the best, of course, is the high end, the high fashion, expensive and influential furnishings. And most manufacturers in the US focus on maybe one or two of those price points. You don't find many companies that promote products in all of those four categories. So they are somewhat focused and strategic in those areas. You know, and you mentioned the millennials again as they are very sophisticated shoppers. They have the internet. They are exposed to global styles, and they may bring a very European or international style into their home, into the Midwest, which years ago wouldn't happen because they didn't have the internet. They didn't have as many channels to view alternate lifestyles that they could enjoy living with. So I think that makes it a little bit more difficult or challenging for the manufacturer today to kind of define what lifestyle, what consumer lifestyle they want to reach out to and sell products to. So you have to be, again, I just use the word strategic. I think that's a pretty good
Yes.
word to use in developing products.
Yes, yes. In terms of price point that you just mentioned, you believe that we have, in other words, maybe space for everybody there because we can have low prices, you can have a middle prices, and this means maybe for the manufacturers in Brazil that maybe they can be more excited because I think there is a room for everybody there, right?
I agree. I think that when I advise manufacturers now, I tell them to put an emphasis more on the breadth of their offerings, not quite the depth, just because consumers aren't just going to accept just what they think, what the manufacturer thinks is good for them. It's the client, it's the consumer that really determines what's important because they can get it from anywhere. They can have it shipped into their home via the internet or any which way. They are looking for variety, good quality, good pricing, and of course, because home fashions and furnishings are a global business now. Again, last 20 plus years, the emphasis in manufacturing has been in Asia. That's all changing. And so I think there are certainly opportunities for other parts of the world to influence and sell what they're very good at into the US market. And I think that's an exciting time. Some other statistics that I think are important. There's a gentleman by the name of Jerry Epperson, who is a very knowledgeable person. He's has a consulting firm and he runs most of the big numbers for the industry.
Mhm.
And he was telling me at one point that for the next probably 5 to 6 years, there will be about 1 million new households set up, not homes built, but households, whether apartments or condos or whatever. And so it's a growing market. And despite our short-term economic issues with COVID, et cetera, I think there's good opportunity. But I'll get to some other points here. But I wanted to mention again, for your manufacturers, probably the one place that is important to go see is the High Point Furnishings market. That's where you can see pretty much everything in a nutshell. And I've got some numbers here. There are over 180 buildings, not just one convention center, but there are like 180 buildings in High Point, North Carolina, and some of the environment around there that have showrooms. There's 11.5 million square feet of show space. So there's a lot to walk and see. They have over 100 countries are represented there. 2,000 plus exhibitors, and there are approximately 75,000, I think on average, people that come and shop the market. So those are people, either designers, retail store owners, corporate design buyers that come there and shop that market. So if you're looking for inspiration and an opportunity, High Point is really a pretty unique place to come and check things out. There's
Yeah.
also the Las Vegas market, and again, both of them are held twice a year. The High Point show is April and October, and the Las Vegas market is in January and then in the summer. But again, an amazing array of product, and I've been going there, for 30 plus years, and I always come back inspired. It's
Yes.
neat to see
Yes.
the amount of
True.
craft and creativity that goes
Mhm.
into home fashions. It's really inspiring.
True, true, Steve. And you just touch in inspiration, and I can, ask you now, what are some of the macro trends affecting the home fashion market in the US in your point of view?
Well, I've touched on a couple, but certainly the millennial and the Gen Z, the next generation, there are a lot of consumers there. And so, the macro trend is that people will be buying furnishings. They will be wanting products from our industry.
Mhm.
And they will be very sophisticated, but in general, I I define the macro styling trends as either a soft, a casual contemporary, or a casual traditional. That's the broadest. But then I dial it down typically to the personality of the manufacturer. And let's say the manufacturer has a strength in high quality veneers or high quality craftsmanship and joinery. Well, then maybe the more modern styles, very European styles, might appeal that have cleaner lines, etc. Or if someone is good at carving or a variety of materials, then perhaps that casual traditional. But there are a lot of more specific styles that you can get into. Like probably the most popular in the last few years has been farmhouse. Now, I'm
Mhm.
completely tired of farmhouse style as a product developer,
Mhm.
but
You there?
it still has some validity for the U.S. consumer. But
Mhm.
it's up to the companies to introduce the new trend, what's going to be newly popular, and so we have to be very savvy with that. But in general, the basic macro trend is that people are so much focusing on their home. They're focusing on remodeling. During the COVID period, we could not leave. So many people put in home offices, or they remodeled, painted, new furnishings, etc. And so I'm very excited that wholeness and well-being are
Mhm.
almost directly tied now to your home and your home interiors. So that's very important. But as I mentioned before, having a broad but targeted style base for your consumer is very important.
Yeah, and you
Anything.
mentioned as well, Steve, about the how important it is the design nowadays, because the designer itself, the people in High Point, I can see that they just switch. It's more designer influence than before there was and used to be the retail store. So
Yes,
could you just talk more about that? How
sure.
important it is that for designers nowadays?
Sure. The emphasis, I'm going to go back to the baby boom generation. Pretty much the post-war generation, they would go to their local store, and whatever was, the three or four options they had to choose from, that's what they had to choose from. And so it was up to that local merchant to decide what styles were popular, etc. Well, that's no longer the case. And to differentiate your product and to stand out, I think there's a hierarchy of importance for a manufacturer to look at. Pardon me.
Mhm.
Um, and the first, of course, is your brand. And are some of the manufacturers in Brazil, do they have a very strong brand already? And can that brand and what it promises to the consumer, can that be translated into the US market? I think if they have a strong brand and they can promote that, that's a very strong tool for the design of the products that come out of that brand. And, some of the very, very strong brands here in the United States to look at might be like Bernhardt Furniture. They have a very strong brand. They have a very strong, hip, more contemporary look, but it's very metropolitan. But they also are just known for having very stylish and very high quality furniture. Next, some of the other opportunities for design
Yes.
might be if a manufacturer in Brazil has a very specific look. Again, that might, and as we talk about design, or I call it vibe sometimes, bringing in kind of a little bit of a music term into it. Could that work well with an already established manufacturer here in the US, and perhaps reach out to that manufacturer and say, look, this is what we do. We know that the American market is becoming more global in um, its style, parameters. Would you like to test some products and put them in your showroom and see if they appeal to your consumer? That
Mm-hmm.
could be one design opportunity as well.
Mm-hmm.
Um, Next, I think that if perhaps a manufacturer has a very, very unique advantage, and I'm not necessarily sure what that advantage could be. It could be price. It could be a very, very unique style, or something even patented, if there's something in the home office
Innovation.
area,
Mm-hmm.
or it could be finishing, something that
Mm-hmm.
offers perhaps the interior design trade um, the options to finish things in different, unique colors or materials. That could be a very strong advantage that you could partner with, a distributor or a company here in the U.S. as well. And then finally, there's the whole world of online sales. If you have a company that's very good at typically the smaller items that fit within the parameters of the shipping, the UPS and the FedEx, um, there are opportunities and occasional furnishings for there's just a lot of neat sales that can happen that way, and those items are typically a little bit lower priced, but they try to throw more value with beautiful finishes and stone
Styles.
tops and other things
Mm-hmm.
that create that more eclectic interior that's very popular. And then finally, if I want to talk about the market here in the U.S., there has been a trend away from all of the pieces within a collection looking the same. There's now that whole eclecticism where perhaps I think the word is curated, where you have the look is perhaps you've worked with an interior designer, even if you haven't, but the companies are putting together collections that all the items are just not all matched in their design treatments. But they still go together very well. They express that lifestyle
Mm-hmm.
that the consumer is trying to reach. And
Mm-hmm.
to illustrate that, the coastal lifestyle has been very popular, and it's almost
Mm-hmm.
like you're going on vacation all day long at your home, where you have rattan furnishings, and the blues and green colors and interiors and fabrics are very popular. So I guess to summarize that question about what design opportunities are there, I think there are a lot of design opportunities, but you need to think very strategically. I talk with a lot of companies who tend to have a more haphazard methods, like, this is what we make. Can you help us sell it? I said, well, that's good that you make that,
But it's not
but
the ideal.
it's not necessarily right for the US market. So
Exactly.
everything is important, from what you manufacture, the price point. Um, are you eco-friendly? Because the younger consumers really want to know that they're not hurting the planet
Mm-hmm.
with the products and the things that they buy. Down to how do you ship it there? How do they look at it? Web presence is very important, all the
Mm-hmm.
way down to your sales and distribution. Very, very,
Yes.
everything needs to be focused.
Yes, sounds music to me, and I think we have a very good opportunity in front of us, Steve, because Brazil has enormous different types of materials, species. We just heard from the pre-COP, the last event in last year in Panama. There's a World movement for making better the ESG, the sustainability, everything. And we just heard, and we was recognized as the modern system for tracking forest in the world. But the world doesn't know that. We have to explore better. We have to put ourselves there and talk to people. And it was so correct. And you say that we have to adapt, we have to blend, we have to mix up and see how better we can go together. And we are, facing different times nowadays. We are trying to get Brazil as the position that the US is looking for a friendshoring, countries that has the same values, the same, patterns and respect most of everything. And also we are here for learning, because this is a very important point. We have to learn more, listen more, and then you can develop something that is more, in accordance with expectation, I think. So I'm so, blessed to be with you, Steve. Always a pleasure to talk to you. And I don't know if you have another piece of advice or the last comment that you wanted to put in. Be my guest, please.
Okay, well, thank you. Thank you again for the opportunity. I look forward to hopefully seeing you soon in High Point in April. But like I said, I'm an optimist, and people buy furnishings during happy times of their lives. They get a new home, they have new children. Those are occasions to buy new furnishings. So it's a great industry. Most of the people that I know and met over these 30 plus years are good people. Business comes down to knowing and working with good people. And there's, I think, some neat opportunities. It takes time and investment and thinking, but I think it is a great time to be developing furnishings products. And the U.S. market is open and growing more diverse all the time. And I think the Brazilian culture, just in general, is dynamic. It's a tour de force, which would translate well into the home furnishings market.
Yes, just pretty well. So again, Steve, thank you very much for your time. And I'm so excited to be, with you in High Point next April and see what else we can do together. Thank you very much for your time.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.